tonight, though, we have a created creature. This is a created creature that I've wanted to do a lesson on for a long time. From early childhood, I was fascinated by these. I would read about them in nature magazines. And I used to say, why don't we have river otters? Now I know that we have river otters. However, we did not have river otters in our area growing up because of the acid coming out of the strip mines had killed the fish, and so there was no reason for these created creatures to venture up our streams and the tributaries of Duck Creek. However, we now have river otters in abundance that are quite frankly considered to be more of a pest than an amazing created creature. But otters, there are 13 species of otters throughout the world. Native to our area are the river otters, and most of the lesson is focused on our native creatures as God has created them in a unique way, but we do have a little bit where we talk about the otter for a moment. So one of the things that I want to emphasize to you that this otter reminds us of, it reminds us that God wants us to enjoy life. The river otter is never too old to enjoy life or have fun. You know, I've noticed the older I get, the more of a stick in the mud I become. I never was super adventurous, but these little critters, they nib and they nose around the rocks and the holes, and they are always interesting. I don't go to the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium very often, but when I do, one of the exhibits that always has a crowd around it is the river otter exhibit. We go to the Columbus Zoo and we think we're going to go see something from Africa or Australia or some other exotic place that we will never visit. And you walk to the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium, and one of the exhibits that draws the largest crowds of people, at least when I've been there, is the river otter exhibit. And that is because they are so fun to watch. Something I forgot to tell the folks about this morning. Does the name King James I mean anything to you? King James I is the one who commissioned the English translation that most of you read from today, the King James Version. When I was studying river otters, I realized, and otters in general, I realized that King James kept river otters in his palace. I forgot to share that this morning. He kept 5 river otters at all times in his palace for personal entertainment. Of course, that was before, video games and such not that have corrupted our minds in today's world. And so we had to become more creative in, the 1600s with entertainment. But for King James, river otters was his form and one of his favorite forms of entertainment. It has been said by a number of people that no other animal plays as much as the otter. And we could really, really take a lesson from these little created creatures. Sometimes we tend to stress about things that are beyond our control. We tend to become sulky, as I like to tell my children, sulky, moody, sad, downcast. We can forget that life can be fun and become a workaholic. And so sometimes it's good for us to ask ourselves, what did God intend for life to be like? God created us and said, in my words, not his words, that we ought to at least have a little fun. And there is a Bible author who wrote about that. Did you know that? There's a Bible author that talks about enjoying life. No other author in the Bible wrote more about it than the wise man Solomon. And this, the first passage is I've got that one messed up. So I'm going to skip that, and I'm going to go to Ecclesiastes chapter 8. And in verse 15, I want to see what Solomon has to say about how you ought to have fun. Ecclesiastes chapter 8 and verse 15. A wise man, in writing in his final days, says this. And I commend joy for man. For man has nothing better under the sun than to eat and to drink and to be joyful. For this will go with him in his toil through the days of his life that God has given him under the sun. We eat, we drink water. Without eating, our energy ceases to exist. We wouldn't have the energy to live if we didn't eat. We drink lest we become dehydrated. If we don't drink, our bodies become dehydrated and our organs fail. Solomon says, eat, drink, and enjoy life. Solomon is wanting us to understand that it is just as important to be joyful, to fill our lives with joy, as it is to eat and to drink. Back in Proverbs, when Solomon is writing to his son in preparation for life, in Proverbs 17:22, Solomon says, a joyful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Remember I said, dehydration without water, dehydration without joy. And the otter reminds me of these things. The otter has learned to balance life with joy. Life